think there would be any hope that we could get the Carter Center to oversee some of these votes in any of the states?
Well, Jimmy Carter is on record as saying that our elections in 2004 were less, free and reliable than Cuba, the Soviet Union, which didn't exist at the time. No, I mean, but the Carter Center has joined Princeton University and the Brennan Center and John Conyers Commission and the Government Accountability Office in saying that electronic voting machines can be rigged to steal an election. There's no doubt about that. They have joined in that consensus. To get them to oversee the election, that's an interesting idea. We did have UN observers. I could not make this up. A team of UN observers came to Ohio before the 2004 election and asked if they could observe our election. And J. Kenneth Blackwell, the Secretary of State of Ohio, told them that if they got within 100 feet of our polls, they would be arrested. So that's our international diplomacy in Ohio.
Perhaps if the Green Party demanded it on behalf of Cynthia McKinney?
Well, are you on the ballot here?
No.
I don't know what you're saying. Well, the Green Party, the Green Party was not on the ballot in Ohio, but David Cobb, they were a party to our lawsuit. They were given standing by the court, even though they weren't on the ballot. So I would not. I would look into the law about that. Get your lawyer and see what you can do. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just have one question about the electronic voting, because I said to somebody that worked at the polls, I said, well, there's no hard copy of voting record. And they said, oh yeah, we get a printout of it.
Yeah, right.
So.
We thought that early on when we wrote this book, we thought that maybe we could get a paper trail on an electronic voting machine, but it's not happening. You can't do it.
But even if there's a printout, I guess the manipulation takes place well before the printout.
Yes, and the printouts are usually done on that really bad paper, and they're essentially worthless.
Okay.
Okay. You're better off with a grocery receipt than you are with the printout from an electronic voting machine. Yes.
Well, I just want to talk about the sustainability of the movement.
Okay.
And I look at some young folks here. I reached on my bookshelf earlier. I was going to bring a book to have it autographed. I noticed it was autographed by you in 1981.
Wow.
I worked with Kay and the Crawdad Alliance, that kind of thing. I was an intervener with the NRC on Callaway, and also practiced nonviolent civil disobedience at the Callaway Nuclear Power Plant.
Good for you.
Well, it's only the beginning, though. But what I wanted to remark on is how it takes a while sometimes to bring these things home. We're still fighting some of the same battles, but I want the younger folks here to keep in mind that we need your energy to keep doing this.
And well, you also got to remember a couple of things about the anti-nuclear movement, about being an activist, which, first of all, it's a hell of a lot of fun. Second of all, you meet really cool people. Right? And the coolest people in the world. And third way, it's the only way to learn about history. The only way to learn about history is to make history. And I learned that at Chicago Convention. I went to the University of Chicago to be a graduate student in history. And I went up, and my classes were kind of interesting, and I thought I was learning anything. But the best instructor I ever had was the cop that whacked me on my behind with the billy club. That's where you really learn about history. So today we do things nonviolently, but and there also is nothing more satisfying than changing the course of history, which we have done. And our generation has been spoiled because when I demonstrated, I did my first demonstration when I was a junior in high school. And there was a roller rink in Columbus, Ohio that was segregated. You'll be glad to know that the land on which that roller rink sat is now owned by Buster Douglas, who was the heavyweight champion of the world, beat Mike Tyson. But anyway, we desegregated that roller rink. And it was a fantastic experience. And then, I went into the South on the Meredith March and met Martin Luther King, who was just phenomenal. And I got arrested with Ben Spock, who I spoke with here. That was really fun, getting arrested with Ben Spock, And I met Barry Commoner and Kay and Leo and all these wonderful people. And if you're thinking of a career, the greatest line about being a social activist is, the pay's not good, but the work is steady. So.
Well, I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. And a lot of the people in this room today are alive, literally alive, because we stopped Callaway 2 and all the other nuclear plants. And we prevented nuclear war You know, we haven't had a nuclear war. God knows how we have not had a nuclear war. But, well, I'll tell you one thing, and I'll get to the end here, but I would never recommend anybody read anything written by Richard Nixon. But in Richard Nixon's autobiography, he states in a footnote, his secret plan for ending the war in Vietnam was to nuke Vietnam. That was his secret plan. And he has a footnote in there. He says, well, I was going to drop nuclear weapons on Vietnam, but I knew that the anti-war movement would tear the country apart. I have never heard a more satisfying justification for what we did in the war, in the movement in the war against Vietnam, right? And so now, you know, I have the opportunity, when I go back to my farm in Massachusetts, I can go to where they were going to build this nuclear power plant. They never brought the bulldozers in. It is a nature conservancy. And you can imagine in this spot what two 1,400 megawatt nuclear plants would have been like. And instead, you can lie down in the sand and look up at the sky and see the birds and hear the water go by. In my town, Columbus, we beat a nuclear dump. The most fun I had, actually the hardest battle, we shut a McDonald's. Those guys are ferocious, man, but we beat a McDonald's. We shut a trash burning power plant, which was a nightmare. And I have kids, and I know that my kids' health was imperiled by that trash burning power plant. Most satisfying of all, and it was always a favorite, we had a guy who I actually knew in high school was going to build a massive suburban housing development. And you know, the apocalypse, if there is a definition of apocalypse, it is sprawl. You know, the most thorough devastation of the planet is suburban development. And so we managed, there was a suburban development that was going to go in next to a wildlife refuge. And I'll finish with this. And this guy who I knew in high school was going to build 240 acres, which isn't all that much land. He was going to put 240 houses and 1,100 condo units on this thing. And it was right next to the wildlife refuge. It was going to destroy the wildlife refuge. So we went through, it took a year. The fact that we were friends from high school made no difference whatsoever. And we stopped the guy. And then what happened was that we have a pretty cagey guy who runs the park system in central Ohio, and he went in and bought the land for 1/10 the price it would have cost. And now I can ride my bike, I can leave my house, I can ride on the new bike path, which we also won, and take me about 45 minutes, and I can be at this wildlife refuge, and I can look at this land and see the birds and see the cattails and see the swamp and know that this would have been utterly destroyed and say, hey man, we did that. So if you're a young person, pick a battle and win it, and just remember that we win these things. We win these things, and we're going to keep winning them. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. The food was great. Wonderful to see you all. I'll sign your books if you want them, and stop cowaying. Thank you.